Evening, Mike.
Hello, Julian. You all right?
Yeah, sore throat, actually. You haven't got any antibiotics left over from a previous course, have you?
Yeah, I've got various sorts in the cupboard.
Can I grab some?
Yeah, no problem at all.
Please. Is that still a good idea?
I don't know, but I tell you what, our
Yeah.
guest tonight will probably point us in the right direction.
What, Fergus Allerton?
Yeah.
Let's ask him.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Mike Brampton.
And my name is Julian Ho.
Welcome to Veterinary Ramblings.
Hi, Fergus.
Hello. You must be Fergus.
I am. Hello.
Hello.
Fergus. Mike. Or
Nice
Mike,
to meet you.
whichever side he's on.
Nice to meet you too. So, brilliant stuff. We were just talking about you.
Convenient.
Surprisingly enough. Now, there's so many places that we could start. And that's what we were discussing before you came on. Where are we going to drive this? And I thought I'm going to be brave enough to ask the difficult question this time.
You're going to go straight in again, are you?
And I go straight in again. So this is a question that we ask. I was going to say to make people comfortable is precisely the opposite. It's if you introduce a level of discomfiture at the start of an interview or a conversation, then you know that it's not going to sink lower and go worse than that. So here we go. I'm going to get Mike to ask this question. I'm going to just pour myself a glass of wine. But Mike, if you could ask the question.
You're going to wimp out again?
There's the laryngitis. I'd ask it, but it's done. You.
Really? So as we enter episode 136, you are still avoiding asking the difficult question.
It's a bit awkward about it, especially because I know Fergus quite well. And
in which case, it should be relatively straightforward for you to ask the difficult question.
It's even more awkward.
I'm sorry about this.
Sorry, Fergus, to bring you.
Sorry, Fergus. We've only just met as well, and
yeah.
Do you want to at least you know this character. The difficult question falls to me then. In that case, so in that case, then Fergus, what is your favourite bread?
Sourdough.
Fantastic.
Very
I think we're
fashionable.
getting a real leaning towards flour on this. Great.
With or without seeds?
With seeds, I would say.
Poppy seeds or
Okay.
mixed seeds?
Mixed seeds.
Oh, that's 2 on the trot.
Yeah, last one.
2 on the trot.
Good.
It'll be interesting to see whether the 2 episodes that both have mixed seed sourdough follow each other or not.
Yeah, they might jumble up a bit. Good. Because actually, the thing about sourdough, the thing I love about sourdough is tending to the ferment. I don't know if do you make bread yourself, Fergus?
I don't know. This is all shop purchased. I'm not
So
that adventurous.
sourdough, the reason why sourdough tastes so different wherever you get it is because each bakery will have its own ferment of yeasts and various other bugs to grow up to give it some flavour, which I think segues quite nicely into fermentation and bugs and things. Bacteria, all good, would you say?
Many good, yes. Largely good.
Mhm.
They're not all good, no.
No.
Ah.
So what do we do about those that aren't good?
Give them
Ah.
antibiotics.
Yeah, pop down to the doctors, get a packet of comoxiclav. Sort out coughs and colds, doesn't it?
A minority.
I've got a bit of laryngitis. I've had it for a couple of weeks. I thought, why just pop and get some comoxiclav? Because that'll pretty much sort it out, I think, won't it?
I've got some left from my last time.
Excellent. Come on, grab some.
Yeah, no
Fantastic.
problem.
Because presumably you felt better, so you didn't bother finishing the course.
Oh, absolutely. I was fine.
Great, yeah.
Yes, I picked the bones out of that one then, Fergus.
Well,
I figured I'm smaller than you, so I only took half the dose.
So that'd be all right. I'd be all right as well.
Now, I think we've done just about everything wrong there, Fergus, haven't we?
you have highlighted a few errors, yes, I agree. And not uncommon, though, and things that we should try and confront during every consultation. And I think there is an increasing awareness in human medicine. And if you go to your doctor for your laryngitis, you will see the posters on the wall saying, beware that this is more likely to be a viral infection. In fact, upper respiratory tract infections in people are the situation that is most commonly associated with inappropriate antibiotic use.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
you would be joining a long line of people requesting antibiotics for that problem. And I think it was it last November there was the strep throat outbreak. Was it last year or the year before?
It was last
I
year.
think it was last year, yeah.
Last year, yeah.
And we actually ran out of coamoxiclav briefly because people were using it. And it probably unnecessarily in the majority of cases, but there are instances where bacteria can contribute to those type of signs. But there's a massive overlap in presentation with viral disease. And the antibiotics won't make a difference in that context. So we're trying to work out when the antibiotics are going to be useful and reach for them in that situation and avoid them otherwise, because overuse contributes to an increased resistance issue and will set us up for bigger problems in the future.
Now, we'll get on to resistance in a minute, but I thought I'd highlight. So last year, my youngest daughter had a very sore throat, and a couple of children in her class had been very unwell with streptococcus infection. So we don't tend to go to the doctors an awful lot. We were pretty sure it wasn't a strep throat, but it had been going on for a while. So we popped to the doctor, who had a look and said, no, I don't think it is a strep throat. And we thought, great, fantastic. We don't know the signs to look for in humans. If it was a dog or a cat, I'd know, but humans, a different breed. And then the doctor said, but I'm going to give you some antibiotics to stick in the cupboard because we might run out of them. And so if it turns into strep throat, then start her on it. And I said, hang on, how many patients have you given these antibiotics to just in case you run out and can't give it? She said, oh, or a few, but it's a serious infection. I don't know, just wondering. And that highlights the confirmation bias that a lot of doctors have in prescribing, a lot of vets have as well, seeing out doctors, but a lot of patients have in terms of wanting, expecting antibiotics. And you mentioned that obviously antibiotics don't work on viruses. That's something that still surprises a lot of people. I think the majority of the population aren't altogether certain of the difference between a bacterium and a virus. And so there needs to be a basic level of education there. But let's move on to resistance, because one thing I hear quite a lot is, oh, my dog can't have ampicillin, he's resistant to it. You ever hear that?
I do, and it can mean two things. It could be actually they're mistaking it and they mean intolerant. And we do recognize penicillin allergy in people. And actually, probably in veterinary medicine, we're not great at reporting adverse drug events. So whenever we use medications, we can recognize that they may have adverse effects as well as beneficial effects. We should report these to the VMD when they occur, and probably don't do that as often as would be nice. But they do occur. Probably in the region of 10% of cases in people experience adverse events, whether that's vomiting, diarrhea, which might be what you're trying to treat. So you may not appreciate that it's a consequence of the antibiotics or the medication you're using rather than the primary disease process.
Well, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, we are one big microbiome, aren't we? And if we then start ingesting, and I say we, because I was intrigued there, Julian. That was a very veterinary thing to say, that humans are different from animals. We're all part of nature, and we are just a different species. And just because, look, I'll show you the orange hair if you like. We're not that far away, are we? But
They're not.
yeah, but we are one big microbiome at the end of the day, aren't we?
50-50.
Yeah.
With bacteria or microorganisms.
So is AMR a big problem then, Fergus? Although perhaps I should actually, in the interest of disclosure here, should I do the disclosure bit, Julian? Do you think?
Yes, I would.
Okay. I am a trustee of a little organisation you may have come across, Fergus, an organisation called the Belamos Foundation.
I know them well, yes. Brilliant group.
Thank you. Thank you. I am one of the trustees. So yeah, I've got some of the answers already to some of the questions I'm going to ask you.
It's
But
always best to ask questions you already know the answers to.
absolutely. But in the
Atticus
interest,
Finch.
at the end of the day, I think it's a serious topic, and not all of our listeners are vets. Not all of our listeners are veterinary nurses. We've got a fair proportion of otherwise may be known as the general public listening. And it's a subject that impacts all of us, or every healthcare professional, and the general populations, isn't it? The level of the problem of AMR, how big a problem is this, Fergus?
I think it's an incredibly scary problem, potentially. And there have been a variety of people who've tried to put some figures behind this. In 2016, David Cameron asked Lord Jim O'Neill to prepare some estimates. He was an economist, and he put a load of numbers into his calculator and proposed that by 2050 we could be looking at 10 million people dying per year due to multi-drug resistant infections, which, if you think that 8.2 million people die globally due to cancers each year, losing 10 million people a year, that's the size of the population of Sweden, though unlikely just to affect them. So it would...
Nor would we want it to.
No.
I hasten to add.
No, but it will be disproportionate. It won't be spread evenly around the world. It will affect people in lower socioeconomic countries, and we will probably see great. And the latest research suggests it will predominantly affect older people now. We were worried that it was going to be a big threat to children and things like that, but a recent study published this year suggests that it will disproportionately affect older people as well. And I think that those numbers are scary. 10 million people per year is substantial. And it was backed up by a recent study in The Lancet, which found that about up to 5 million people died in 2019 in association, where their disease or their death could be associated with multi-drug resistance, not always directly caused by. About 1 million were directly attributable to AMR, but up to 5 million were in association. That was something that contributed to your general illness. And
that's the the WHO figures, isn't it? WHO.
they are in The Lancet, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. At this point, can we take a step back? Because as I explained, not all of our listeners are medical professionals, and not all of our listeners would necessarily understand why this is such a problem. I looked at the figures just before we came on air for malaria and found that around about 608,000 people die of malaria each year. Now, if we compare, as Julian pointed out very eloquently, if we compare malaria with antimicrobial resistance, malaria, we are working on cures and palliative cares to improve the outcome of malaria. So malaria deaths are likely to go down. But unless we take AMR seriously, if I'm not mistaken, there's only one way that is going to go, and that is up. So what is the mechanism? What is antimicrobial resistance, and why is it so important?
Oh, antimicrobial resistance predates antibiotic use. They found these mechanisms in bacteria harvested, so to speak, from the Siberian permafrost that were there hundreds of thousands of years ago. So this is a constant battle between different microorganisms for survival. Mm-hmm. And bacteria want to get round whatever challenges are put in front of them. So if we develop antibiotics and we use them, the more exposed those bacterial populations are to different and new antibiotics, eventually resistance will arrive through random mutations and sharing their genetic machinery such that they can overcome these challenges. And therefore, the onus falls on us to outwit the bacteria. And to do that, we need to make sure that we reduce and limit the exposure of bacteria to antibiotics. So we're careful with our antibiotic use. We make sure that it's always rational, appropriate, and helping that individual, whether it's a human or an animal patient. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we slow that rate of resistance development. we want to encourage companies to make new antibiotics so that when we do come up with against a superbug, we have a new super antibiotic that will overcome that resistance that they face. And we want to improve diagnostics as well. So we want to be able to recognize when the infections are present as quickly as possible so that we can treat them most accurately as well.
I
Distinguish
think
between-
accuracy there is a good word to use. Yeah.
So it's really, you mentioned several times targeting the right. Now, there was a term that came up the other day because you and I were at a meeting in Surrey, which was fantastic, all about AMR. And there was a term that came up there, which is the right drug for the right infection at the right time. And I know that you were certainly, if not the prime force, one of the prime forces behind a certain protocol in the veterinary field, spearheaded by the BSAVA. I guess you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely, yeah. The Protect Me Antimicrobial Stewardship Guide. There are a variety of these available across Europe, but the Protect Me is the UK versions, proudly supported by BSAVA and the Small Animal Medicine Society. And it's an opportunity for vets to reference the current available evidence supporting antibiotic selection or lack thereof for various presentations. So if they are confronted by a dog with acute diarrhea, there are various sources that they could check to decide whether antibiotics are appropriate or not. And we've tried to bring all that evidence together and offer some recommendations that will hopefully support them to demonstrate good antibiotic stewardship and therefore protect these valuable resources for the future.
And it is excellent. And it's free for all vets, I should say.
Free,
Even
indeed.
freer if you're a member.
Yeah,
That's excellent. So what's that? That's the Protect Me guidelines.
it is.
Protect Me guidelines.
Excellent
Yeah.
stuff. So it's interesting. We meet a lot of people on the show, Fergus, and we meet human medics and as well as vets, and have a good conversation with a lot of different people. A lot of this conversation has been focused on humans. But correct me if I'm wrong, you're a vet.
Yes, I am. And I think there's a big link between human health and animal health. And we describe this as the sort of one health phenomenon alongside the way we interact with the environment. And I think that companion animal medicine, so cats and dogs, has a particular relevance here because we share so much with the animals that we live with, including that microbiome. So you may have a level of contact with your dog or cat that means that you will exchange bacteria and in particular those resistance mechanisms. So if your vet treats your dog with a load of antibiotics, it might mean that some of the bacteria in your dog become resistant. And then that resistance could spread to you and you'll carry these resistant bacteria. And about 5 to 10% of vets carry resistant bacteria in their noses. And that isn't a problem for the vast majority of our lives. But if we find ourselves in a situation where we do need a new hip, a new knee, we have to undergo chemotherapy or something of that nature, these could become a problem for us. I think there's a massive potential for antibiotic use in dogs and cats to have human health implications. And therefore, we want to be part of that solution and reduce the risk that we damage not just the pets that we see, but the wider community around them, including their owners.
So thank you for so eloquently summarising the foundation of the Bella Moss Foundation.
Exactly, yes.
which we won't cover here because I know that we've got a series of on the coming up that he's gonna cover all of that juicy stuff in different detail. So what got you into this then, Fergus?
I've been very lucky. I was involved in the Small Animal Medicine Society, and I chaired that for a number of years. And they were part of that Protect Me scheme. So the first iteration was really down to Ian Ramsey, Ian Battersby, and a few others. They came up with this idea. They really were pioneers in bringing antimicrobial stewardship to a veterinary audience. And as with everything, evidence moves on, and some of the recommendations made in 2012 weren't applicable come 2018. We had new improved evidence to say, actually, we can get away with shorter antibiotic courses, or that's a condition that you can manage without antibiotics at all. So we felt there was an opportunity to refresh these guidelines, and did that in 2018. So I got keenly involved in that, and it's snowballed really since then. And I'm interested in anything antimicrobial stewardship related, and I've taken this on tour around the world now to try and encourage others to adopt some of the principles outlined in Protect Me, and hopefully that will translate into better learnings here as well, and we can keep moving forward, keep improving the resource.
Does that world tour come across much resistance? Pardon the pun.
I think there are different approaches around the world, and there are different appreciations of the scale of the problem. And I think at the moment, even in the UK vet profession, we have a duty to try and get our house in order. We're not quite where we should be just yet, especially in the companion animal field. It's amazing the improvements that have been made in the livestock sector over the last 5 to 10 years, largely driven by Rumour, the group there. And they've made phenomenal changes, especially on the poultry and the pig industries.
Absolutely. We saw some figures on those data, or some data rather, on those strategies last week. And I just got to interject here. Rumour is a body known as the rational use of medicines in animals.
Agriculture.
Agriculture. There we go. I knew it. Rational use of medicines in agriculture.
It is, yes. But
RUMA.
And it was a livestock focused group initially, but there is now a small animal arm to that. And trying to promote one of their latest initiatives is the Antibiotic Amnesty. So they're trying, you mentioned that in your preamble earlier on, and saying how you were exchanging antibiotics and keeping them for future use. And that's where the Antibiotic Amnesty is coming in, to try and address those sort of aberrant behaviours where possible.
And actually, as we talk, the Antibiotic Amnesty is going on. Sadly, when this airs, it'll be passed for this year, but there'll be one next year. And so this was something that started in the human field and has been extended to the veterinary field. We have, as a nation, tons of antibiotics and medicines that we've stuck in our bathroom cupboards or kitchen cupboards because we didn't need to finish the course. We had some left over, or they didn't agree with us. We had reactions against them, and we just kept them just in case someone needs them down the line. And so the Antibiotic Amnesty is a way of getting those safely out of circulation. By safely, not flushing them down the loo, not putting them into landfill, where they might leach out in both cases and create more resistance in the environment. So these are ways of getting them into a practice, into a pharmacy, where they can be safely neutralized and taken out of circulation.
I think it's fair to say it's the Antimicrobial Amnesty is a good initiative, and it's all focused on over a short period of time. But if any of our listeners have got any of the drugs that Julian's mentioned there is absolutely nothing to stop you going down to the local pharmacy and handing them in. And the pharmacist will do exactly what they need to do with them. And then they're not going to tell you off. They'll just accept them, and they'll just get on with it. And you will have the satisfaction of knowing that you've done the right thing. So,
we do try and raise the awareness during November, to overlap with World AMR Awareness Week. But you're exactly right. This is a year-long idea, and any situation where you're left with unused, partially used antibiotics, do return them for safe disposal, because it's just going to cause a whole host of problems if we don't do that. So
we mentioned education of the general public. Now, education always starts with children, doesn't it?
Does.
And I know last year you got me getting well out of my comfort zone and going into the local school and telling them all about antimicrobial resistance. And I was very proud to be an antibiotic ambassador. So do you want to tell us a bit about that facet of educating the public?
Yeah, so this was actually a scheme devised by UKHSA, which used to be Public Health England. And they put out a call for any health professional, but really pharmacy students, medical students, doctors, nurses, to try and raise awareness of AMR, to try and also instill some basic principles like hand hygiene. That's the biggest thing you can do to reduce the risk of any form of transmissible infection, is to wash your hands effectively. And COVID helped in that. There was one silver lining, at least, that we all realized how important hand washing was, and we started doing that more frequently. And last year we tried to introduce to that school ambassador scheme a veterinary feel, because I think that kids, like all of us, relate well to animals, and the idea of doing things to improve animal health can be even more attractive than doing things to promote human in some situations. I think kids hopefully are responsive to that.
Forgive me for laughing here, Fergus, but you just picture in my head of you going into a group of school kids with a kitten and a puppy dog going, now we wouldn't want anything nasty to happen to the puppy dog, would you?
Exactly. But these are motivating factors. And I was really grateful. We had quite a few ambassadors that volunteered from the veterinary field. And I have to say, I did it as well. And it was the best audience that you ever speak to. Do a bit of lecturing here and there, and speaking to 300 school kids, and then asking for a group volunteer and worrying that there's not going to be a single hand. You get 300 hands at school.
Yes. Yes.
Zero
And some of
hands
the
in a vet.
teachers as well.
Yes, indeed. And it was great. We do a little glitter experiment, so you can show that rubbing your hands in glitter, it will pass down a line, amazingly far down a line. And if that happens with glitter, a massive particle, think what would happen with bacteria. And the kids can relate to that. They recognize the importance of it, and they will become the champions of the future. And
Yes.
AMR is a problem that's not that dissimilar to climate change. It seems to be a nebulous idea with potentially apocalyptic consequences in the future. But my children come home and they say, you've got to recycle that better. You're not doing enough to save the planet. I'd like them to also have those opinions around AMR. What can we all do? What little measures can we do to help reduce the risk of infection, to improve the way we use antibiotics, and to safely dispose of them as well? So it was an opportunity to bring the amnesty into schools as well and say, go home, ask your parents to find where those antibiotics are and get them returned to a safe venue for disposal.
Yeah, absolutely a must, isn't it? Essential. And I think for too long, we've relied on antibiotics as a shortcut to good hygiene.
Yeah.
And in the veterinary profession, I know that when I first started out, we'd give antibiotics to every single surgical case. And then someone said, why do we need to? Because the boss told us to. Because we've always done it. That's the worst question ever, isn't it? Worst answer. Because we've always done it. And doing things properly, giving proper attention to sterile technique and aseptic surgery, you shouldn't need antibiotics unless there's a mistake somewhere.
Pretty much, yeah, absolutely. And they're the Halstead principles. And William Halstead, fascinating chap. He was one of the guys who first advocated the use of gloves in surgical
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you know why?
He was a cocaine addict, wasn't he? But
I'm not aware of that bit.
Yeah,
One thing I know is that the reason he was so keen on gloves is that there was a nurse helping him in the surgeries, and she would develop quite a bad reaction to some of the disinfectants they use. So I think it was one of these rubber companies that he asked to produce some gloves so that this nurse could assist with his surgeries. And she then wore gloves, could participate in surgeries, and he later married her. And
indeed.
right. And
Well,
later in his career that he berated himself for saying he realized that was a way to get someone into the surgery and in a sterile way, but hadn't then started wearing gloves himself. And that's what he should have done. He should have said, actually, it's not just a way to get that pretty nurse involved. It's also a way to reduce infection for us all. So
Yes.
I think it's, well, there are loads of things that he brought to medicine in general, but you're exactly
Absolutely.
right. We shouldn't rely on antibiotics to compensate for poor surgical asepsis, and they're probably causing harm. And if you use antibiotics unnecessarily, there is a risk that actually the bug that you will encounter further down the line causing your surgical site infection will be a resistant strain, will be one that we then don't have a good answer to, and that you're starting to say, okay, this is a really serious complication that is going to need revisional surgery, source control, amputation, rather than a short course of antibiotics. So we have to be very careful that if we are reaching for antibiotics, that they are the safety blanket we want them to be, and not one that's actually going to make our problems harder.
No, absolutely. Well said. Well said. And it's not so you go into schools and you act as an antibiotic ambassador, but you go to Barnardo's as well as a visitor, but that's not as an antibiotic ambassador, is it?
No, that's a separate thing. And I had a friend through one of the sporting events that I got involved in, who has been for many years an independent visitor with Barnardo's, and he recommended this, and it has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. So I have 4 daughters, which is great, amazing, but I've been volunteering for 5 years now and look after a boy who's been in foster care for pretty much his entire life. And you are, as an independent visitor, and every child in foster care in the UK has the right to an independent visitor. And what you do is you go in 1 day a month and you can do a fun activity, go to the cinema, go 10-pin bowling. I've been to different rugby matches and football matches, and we've been to London a couple of times. So we can experience different things, and it's just a different day out for that particular young person. And
I'm sorry. And these are young people who are in foster care.
they are, yes.
So for our American listeners, could you explore Barnardo's for them a little bit, please, Fergus?
Yes, they may not know what Barnardo's is.
Yeah, so Barnardo's is a charity set up to support children in foster care, and has done some phenomenal work and works closely with social services to afford a variety of different support networks. And one of them is the Independent Visitor Network, and that's what I've been involved in. And effectively, you can spend a few hours a month visiting and just taking care and engagement with these young people's lives. And I've only been involved, as I say, for just over 5 years, but now with the young person I'm involved, I'm the adult that's been in his life for the longest, because they do move foster home, they do change social worker, they do change other things in their lives. So I think it is something that it's a startlingly different world than the one I'm used to and I've been brought up in. And I think it has been a eye-opener for me, and I do feel that it is a rewarding experience and hopefully a positive experience for the young person as well. So one thing that they certainly, when I joined Barnardo's and part of this, they said they really lack men. Lots of young people or young men would like a male independent visitor, and they're not as common as you would think. But it's an easy thing to do, and it's been a great fun thing to do. And my young person is an absolute superstar. He's really good fun to spend time with, and so I've learned a lot from him. And I think hopefully it's a positive two-way thing as well.
Sounds incredible.
I'd encourage people to look into it. The independent visitors are needed around the country, and it's fun, good thing to do.
So you go onto the Barnardo's website, would you?
I think it's something that different agencies do it around the country. Certainly in the West Midlands, Barnardo's do run the IV scheme. But as I say, it's a legal right for every young person to have their own independent visitor. And I think if there were enough volunteers to fill those gaps, that would be a positive thing for a lot of children in care.
That sounds incredible. What a wonderful gift to give.
Yeah, no, I would strongly recommend it. I was put onto it by my friend Jazz, and it's been fantastic. Strongly recommend it.
What was the trigger for Jazz to put you onto it?
He'd been doing it for a few years, and like me, he's a father of a couple of girls, and he said that he was going to the cinema to watch, I can't remember what it was now, but Jumanji or something of that nature. Yeah.
Not Barbie. Not Barbie.
Not Barbie. Yeah, he said, this is my way out to go and see something a little bit different. And then he started talking about his experiences, and it was so positive about it. I thought should investigate and give it a go. It's been fantastic. So strongly recommend it.
Excellent.
Look,
Okay.
So was this on the running leg, the cycling leg, or at the end of the swimming leg that this conversation happened?
Well, yeah, it was post triathlon. So the triathlon's one of those things that, as I've got older, has got harder, and I've had to park the bike for the time being and just stumble slowly around my local loop. That
were you a distance cyclist?
I did long distance triathlon. I was a slow cyclist, a slow runner, and a slow swimmer. So I thought if I combined the three, there would be an opportunity to get by. But,
it just struck me as a sort of conversation you'd have when you both realised that maybe that was a little bit tough. And you know what you ought to do, Fergus? You ought to do this.
Yeah. And more afternoons in the cinema. Yeah.
And more afternoons in the cinema, absolutely.
Less time on the bike, more time in the cinema, or watching rugby.
Exactly.
And is it water polo you do as well, or?
I used to. So I loved water polo. It was my sport of choice for 20 years. And
wow.
Yeah, great team sport. Really, it's I was never very sporty at school. So there were kids playing rugby, kids playing football, doing hockey. And then there were those who were moved to one side. And eventually we ended up in the swimming pool and thought, well, how could we make swimming a bit more interesting? And throwing a ball around was brilliant. So I loved it and did 20 years and got to play all over the world.
Wow.
Did you?
Yeah, I went to Kyiv once to play water polo. So
Wow. I was never that good at water polo at school, but I did enjoy underwater hockey. I was on the team for that. But we were one of the few teams in the area. So we never really got to play. I think we've played 2 other schools in the whole of my career.
How do you play underwater hockey then?
You have a lead puck and pushers, which are basically, we made them out of table tennis bats. You make them into slightly scooped V shape, and you push them along from one end to another. It's called octopush. Another name, but
in a different life, I was a snorkel instructor, kids snorkeling instructor for the British Sub-Aqua Club.
Exactly. I got my snorkeling instructors.
We used to play octopush a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
And I was just thinking, underwater hockey, that sounds very familiar to me.
People know how rough idea when you say underwater hockey.
Yeah.
What you mean? If you say octopus, then they think, is that giving drugs to cephalopods or something? So
something like
there you go. But you don't do any polo anymore, water polo?
No, my eldest daughter tried for the last couple of years. So I've been more watching from the side and wish I could still do it.
Julian,
you can't do everything.
Julian, when would Fergus have the time?
I know. Other than all of this, Fergus does actually work.
I do, yeah.
So Fergus is one of the main medical specialists at Willow's Referrals.
One of the.
It's an amazing team there. I wouldn't single any of them out to be any better than the others, but it's quite incredible. And what made you start? We're not going to go down on what made you become a vet, because you decided when you were 5, as we all did. But what made you think, I want to be a medic?
I love the not knowing and trying to work something out. So I think that what is going on in this animal question it puzzles me still on a daily basis, and I find the different ways that you can try and get to the solution really exciting. I think that's what I want to be doing, is trying to solve little problems as often as possible. So medicine seems to be a good opportunity to exercise your thinking, and I found it, and I wouldn't be brilliant with a surgical. I would need a lot of antibiotics, I think, more because surgical technique leaves a lot to be desired.
I'm sure you could do anything you put your mind to be honest. So,
But did you know at 5 years old that you wanted to be a vet then?
Not far off, I should think. Yeah,
Okay.
7 or 8.
I'm intrigued by this interest that you have in human medicine.
Yeah, I still do, and I did think for a while about reconverting to medicine, because you can do it on a 4-year course, and it is tempting. There are some avenues in the human field that you could go even further than you can human medicine, and some of the infectious disease specialists just sounds brilliant.
yeah, it does. As you say, the opportunities, the funding, that's what opportunities come down to, isn't it?
Often,
How do you get funded to do what you want to do? And there isn't really that degree of money to do such, I suppose, esoteric things in the veterinary field, even though it's of dire importance.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the problem with not having a national health service for pets, isn't it?
Yeah.
We need another Nye Bevan, don't we? Come along and say, I think we ought to treat our pets the same way.
As a current non-dog owner, why should my taxes go to look after your dog?
Why should my taxes go to fund your hair replacement bills?
Because you know that's a good cause.
Okay, fair enough. That was the wrong example to give, wasn't it? Why should my taxes go to help someone who's a 60-a-day smoker? Ooh. And so, moving on. we're not going to solve that issue, are we? We're not going to solve it at all.
We won't solve that one. I think we could bat that one backwards and forwards all night.
Yeah.
Put the world to rights, like we used to do on Veterinary Ramblings back in the day when we'd knock a bottle of gin down every night. We
can't do that anymore, certainly.
We've grown out of that.
So, Fergus, you mentioned earlier that you do a lot of teaching. And you do. You're very highly sought after as a lecturer. I'm schmoozing Fergus because we want you to do some lecturing for Congress.
Very good at the BSIVA, actually.
Yeah, pretty good. Would you have any experience in doing, I suppose, what sort of short, targeted lectures? I'm thinking of something around 60 seconds of CPD. That sort of length.
60 seconds is hard to get too many messages, but yeah, I think if it works, bite-size information is always good. We're currently preparing a webinar for WSAVA.
Oh, yes.
I'm involved in the therapeutics committee, so we've got representatives from all over the world. There's 11 of us in the committee at the moment, and we're trying to put together a little webinar, and there'll be 4 or 5 minute segments on a whole host of AMR related themes. So we are trying to put that together hopefully in time for World AMR Awareness Week later this month.
I think Fergus is pretending that he's never listened to Veterinary Ramblings ever. And he's unfamiliar with our trademarked 60-second CPD segment. You're not going to get away with it, Fergus. I'm sorry, mate. So, let me rephrase it.
Yes.
I know that you've come across 60-second CPD, haven't you, Fergus?
I'm going to struggle to, in a nutshell, I will try my best. Yeah.
Great. That's all we ask.
Okay, that's all we ask. That's all we ask. Some people will pause and make sure that every word is properly enunciated, and so people understand. Oh, is that my timer? Okay. Fergus, I'm thrilled you're up for the 60-second CPD challenge.
Yeah.
I've got the timer here. If I can get it all in order. What would you like to do your 60-second CPD challenge on?
Well, antimicrobial stewardship, I think, will be.
Antimicrobial stewardship.
Yeah.
Okay, then. In that
Okay.
case, let's get. Where are we going? We're going there, aren't we? That's the way to go. So, in that case, then, 60-second CPD challenge. Fergus Allerton on antimicrobial stewardship, starting now.
So the antimicrobial use contributes to increasing antimicrobial resistance, and that's true of all different types of use. But where we want to try and improve things is by avoiding unnecessary excessive use. So if we can ask the question, are antibiotics really necessary in this clinical situation? We can ensure that we can limit them to where they are absolutely required. And I think that as we learn more and more about different conditions, where they can be managed satisfactorily or effectively, safely without antibiotics, we can hopefully reduce our reliance on antibiotics. We also need to reduce antibiotic courses. We need to make sure that when the antibiotics are completed or there are any left over, that we dispose of them safely. And hopefully the combination of all those things will lead to a better, safer world.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Excellent. Really good. Really good.
That's
I think
exactly
I think you
exactly what we're
passed-
talking about.
Pass the challenge. So, and that counts as a full minute of CPD to go on your one CPD record with the RCVA. Oh no, it doesn't. It doesn't, does it? Because you got to reflect on that.
Need a
So-
reflection question.
Reflection is important anyway.
I think
Do you have a reflection question for our listeners?
I think everyone can contribute to antimicrobial stewardship, and there are lots of different ways that you can do that. So there's you've mentioned the school ambassador scheme, there's the Antibiotic Amnesty, there's really using resources such as the Protect Me guidelines to ensure that your antibiotics use follows national guidelines and recommendations. There's, if people are interested in the Stop on Sunday trial, we're trying to work out what the optimal duration of antibiotic use is when managing or treating sporadic cystitis in female dogs. So if people are interested in that, please do get involved, because we need that collaborative citizen science approach to try and answer that key question around antibiotic course duration. There are loads of ways that anyone can do it. UKHSA, I was on a call with them recently, and they said that you're probably aware of the Antibiotic Guardian scheme and how we can all become antibiotic guardians. To do that, you just need to go to the antibioticguardian.com website and make a pledge. And that pledge can be the way you approach antibiotics, the duration, etc., etc. More dentists have made that pledge than vets. So there is room for improvement.
Gosh.
And if I could
Well,
make one big call, please log in and let's push that number up. And so next year, vets should be above dentists in that.
I'm just polishing my halo because I did that last year. There we go.
Very good. But we need more of us need to, because it does just raise that awareness. And if you're making that pledge, you can then stick to that pledge, and we will be those beacons for rational antibiotic use.
And maybe the antibiotics that we use will still work in 20 years' time.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, but so have you got a reflection question? What should we reflect on the topics that we've been talking about? You've actually given a good one already in your 60-second CPD, but I'll not rehash it. I'll let you do that, Fergus.
I think the reflections should be around, should I need to use antibiotics in this particular situation? Can I manage this animal effectively without recourse to antibiotics? And I'm not anti-antibiotic. There are situations where antibiotics massively improve animal welfare. They can bring animals back from the dead virtually. And so we want to be able to use them, but we want to make sure that we are not using them just in case. We are not using them when they aren't definitely required. That bar needs to be set a little bit higher. So I would ask people, do you think you could review where you put that I'm going to reach for antibiotics bar, question that urge to put that safety blanket in place and really try, can I manage this without? And I think the more you do it and the more you are reassured, actually, it's made no difference. That sneezing cat, that cat with FLUTD, that clean
That
surgical
dog with
procedure,
diarrhea.
that dog with diarrhea, great examples, all will get better just as quickly without antibiotics and probably less damaged in the course of that whole affair. And their microbiome will be grateful.
Absolutely. We haven't really got
So
time to go
will I.
into how stuffed dogs' intestines are after a course of antibiotics. I think we mentioned it before on this podcast. And then the onus goes on to owners and patients going to a doctor, going to a vet, rather than saying, can I have some antibiotics? Saying, do I need those antibiotics? It's different.
Do I need to pressurize my healthcare professional into giving me antibiotics?
And I would caution that may be more of a perceived perception than a genuine feeling and an expectation from owners. There was a brilliant study by a group up at the University of Caledonia, and they looked at, vets said, were asked why they gave out antibiotics. They said, the owner made me. They forced me to do this, and I felt under pressure to prescribe. Whereas those same owners interviewed in the car park said, no, it wasn't my fault. It was the vet that did it. So there's paradox, there's complete polar opposite opinions. And I think there are things that we can do as vets to reduce that tendency to meet perceived expectation. One of those is the non-prescription form. That's available alongside the Protect Me poster. So if people want to use this in practice, you can download it from the BSAVA website, and it just reassures owners that you haven't forgotten that antibiotics exist, but you're just saying, instead of these, let's look at the alternative ways to manage this problem and hopefully get your dog better without antibiotics. And we did also produce a little video, an animation. You can access this via free, available to download from the Protect Me poster. And we showed that by watching this animation or putting this animation up in the waiting room, we could change owners' perceptions in a 2-minute video such that they were less likely to ask for antibiotics. They had a greater awareness of AMR. If people want to use this tool, it's freely available. We've put it out there in 20 different languages, depending on how multicultural your practice is or where you are based in the world. And we hope that it's just that little extra nudge that will get owners on side so that by the time they reach you in the consult room, they are ready and receptive to that message that actually your dog's going to go home with some probiotics, with a new diet, with increased water turnover, and no
or
antibiotics.
just with some advice.
With
and
just some
reassurance.
advice. Absolutely. Best option.
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. I think, Fergus, you have really earned your CBD certificate. And so here we go. This is a certificate of helping us to not all die of antimicrobial resistance bugs. And what we got is, just looking around here from the top left clockwise, we have some Stilton and other cheeses.
Oh, they're good bugs.
It all comes down to penicillin rock 40, doesn't it? The penicillin, or notatum actually, the original one, the penicillin that gave us the first antibiotics. There's a dog with a nasty post-operational wound infection. Not one of mine, but it was one that was referred to me. And clearly he'd never heard of, or he or she, the original vet, had never heard of Halster before their surgical technique was started that day. Now, the bottom picture takes a little bit of explanation.
Looks like
this is a series of anal sac secretions, none of which need antibiotics. Simply expressing does the job 99 times out of 100.
Absolutely.
Then we have a good old cesarean section, and hopefully no one is ever using antibiotics in those these days.
You have to be careful with that in humans. That is the one exception to their prophylaxis rules. So they do. I always refer people back for human recommendations to NICE guidelines and Cochrane guidelines, because I think there is a slight variant on normal approach. But you're exactly right that we don't often require them in veterinary medicine.
No, absolutely. And then there's me playing water polo with a fishing boy.
Is that you on the left or on the right there, Julian?
No, this is Trump on the left with the orange hue.
Ah.
So thank you very much for that, Fergus.
No, thank you.
Brilliant CPD provision.
Very
and
much so.
We've all learned a lot from it.
Absolutely. And I hope everybody that's listening has. I think it's probably beholden on me at this point in time to say, Fergus Allerton, thank you very much for giving us an insight into your life as well, and what makes Fergus tick, as well as sharing such an incredibly important message about antimicrobial resistance. And if you've enjoyed listening to Fergus and the topic, or you've got any questions, don't forget, click like, share, and please subscribe to Veterinary Ramblings, because it really does help us. It makes a difference. And if you want any questions, then ask us, and we'll do what we can. And if we can't answer the questions, then we probably know somebody who can. And in this case, it was Fergus Allerton. Fergus, thank you very much indeed. May your dog go with you.
May your dog go with you.
Same to you.
Cheers. And cut.
Yay.
Wow. Thank you, Fergus.
Thank you.